Hello to everyone who's listening to us right now.
And welcome to the SYP UK podcast.
My name is Victoria Scheer, and I'm the Alumni Liaison Officer for the Society of Young Publishers UK this year.
And I am Amalia Mihailescu, the SYP UK Events and Awards Coordinator for 2020. If you are wondering who the Society of Young Publishers, or SYP, are, then let us quickly fill you in. We are a not-for-profit membership organization run by volunteers, like me and Victoria. Our aim is to help those within the first 10 years of their publishing career, be that if you are just trying to break into it or wanting to progress up the ladder. We do this by running career events, socials, and conferences.
We know the world has changed a lot since the beginning of the year, but so have we. While we can't offer in-person events just now, our team has been working hard on finding new ways to stay connected with everyone at home, and we're so excited to share the results with you.
We are incredibly pleased to present our very first SYP UK podcast episode in what we hope to be a series of recordings that will soon become part of the SYP identity, bringing our community updates from the publishing business. We really hope you join us on this online journey by tuning in, especially since this event is completely free for members and non-members alike.
Now, the topic our guests are going to approach today is a very timely one. The industry professionals on the panel will be talking in the next 45 minutes about the way in which the publishing industry has been affected in the current health crisis, how it is adapting, and what it will mean for the future.
I will also be sharing more details about future SYP events after the talk. Extremely valuable content for those who follow our activity.
Let the conversation begin.
Hi to everybody who's listening, wherever you're listening from. I hope you're having a nice time and your bunker is well stocked with biscuits and books. My name is Leena Norms. I am a podcast producer, presenter. I work at Penguin Random House, and I also do a lot of my own bookish stuff online. And that's who I am. But I want to introduce you to our experts on the panel today. Who wants to go first? Emma, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, my name's Emma Lowe. I am a Director of Publisher Relations at the Bookseller. Been at the Bookseller for 5 years now, and prior to that I headed up the sales team at London Book Fair. So I've been in the publishing industry about 17 years now.
Amazing. Know your stuff. That's what we need.
And I love the industry.
Yeah. Laurie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Laurie Blum Guest, and I am the principal of the Re-naissance Agency. And before that, I was the principal at Mariposa Press for many years, which was one of the experts for English language children's books in France, where I live. And before that, I worked for a major British house, and prior worked with Simon & Schuster and Macmillan. And I'm a little taken aback to say I've been in the publishing business for 40 years, which is relatively.
Wow. We're stacking up those years now of knowledge collectively in the group. It's amazing. And Juliet, tell us a little bit about you in Oneworld. Hi.
Hi. My husband and I, Novi Newstar, set up Oneworld in 1986, originally to produce non-fiction books for a broad audience, and we now publish literary fiction, translated fiction, crime fiction, and children's titles.
Amazing.
I should say the first time I met Juliet, or one of the first times, was when we just reversed a digger into her stand at London Book Fair.
A digger?
Yeah, well, like a forklift truck thing. Yeah,
twice.
I mean,
twice.
What a meeting.
Yeah, can I just say they knocked it down twice?
Oh wow! Has that been an apt representation of how you've got to know Emma since then, Juliet?
Yep.
It's a good summary.
A very close relationship ever since.
Get better to be on her good side, I think you learned.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about all of you, where you're bunkering in, and how you think the coronavirus pandemic is affecting maybe your businesses personally, but also just generally how you've seen the whole industry respond to this pandemic. Who wants to go first?
Well, I mean, I think the publishers are have all responded in a fairly similar way in terms of gradually realizing the impact it was going to have through the spring and the summer. So publishers have now started to, with most of the all the bookshops have now closed. Originally, people were hoping that at least Waterstones would be able to stay open and Amazon would pick up the slack. But now that Amazon is prioritizing essential goods and for books, primarily children's and educational materials, it's obviously having a massive impact on revenue for publishers. So they're now starting to look to move books to safer publication dates and to furlough staff on the government staff retention scheme. So that's been a massive change. And of course, also shutting their offices and putting all staff onto remote working, which certainly in our case involved buying a lot of extra laptops, upgrading our router and, making all those changes, setting up Zoom meetings and generally reinventing the business for an entirely non-contact basis, which obviously we've never had to do before, and nor has anybody else.
Yeah.
Well, a few publishers work like that, but very, very few.
Laurie, is that the same for you?
Well, we are in a different model in that I have a virtual staff for the most part. I mean, I have 4 people in Paris. I happen to be in my house in Corsica and working from Corsica, but I have staff in New York. I have staff in California. So I'm really between 2 continents. And we've done this for many, many years. So we haven't been as affected, but we, of course, have been affected by the book shows. I mean, we were 6 days, when London Book Fair got canceled. And we had an author stuck in London, an American author stuck for the better part of 10 days. And it was quite an ordeal to get him home. And, Frankfurt, of course, we exhibit every year. And that's kind of up in the air because even though, it's slated to move forward, we don't know what's going to happen. But I think these are interesting times. They're certainly very dire and challenging times. But at the same time, I think they can be creative. Because we, for example, do a lot of sci-fi and, fantasy. And traditionally, those books have always been about 70% direct to consumer. So I think now with a lot of the shows and a lot of the bookstores now closed, I think it offers a new possibility of connecting with our, readers and directly rather than only, through traditional means. But that being said, particularly, our American booksellers, I mean, we're a strong community. So we're just, helping as best we can. It's interesting because our distributors are open. Some of our printers are open in America, and they've been listed as essential businesses, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, that's really good. Emma, how has it been for you? Because obviously the Bookseller is traditionally kind of right on the Thames, right in the middle of London, and you've all been flung to all across the country, I imagine. How are things reporting on the industry for you?
Got people spread all over the country. Benedict Page, who some of you will know, is up in Derbyshire, I think, and then a lot of the reporters are London-based. We're down in Surrey. So I think the remote working has certainly meant that we've actually had to over communicate rather than under communicate. We've got 3 or 4 different platforms to communicate. We've got Slack, we've got Zoom, we've got emails, we've got a phone. So there is definitely an experimentation there about how many different platforms you can be across and still be effective. I think the journalists are busier than ever. They're really struggling to make sure that they bring news that's not too alarmist, but that helps people to understand quickly what the situation is so that publishers and bookshops can make the decisions that they need to make. From my particular point of view, I'm responsible more on the event side. So we had to put all of the content that we had for all of the London Book Fair dailies in a giant magazine and then send it kind of stratospherically around using every digital piece, every digital communication we could find. And the BA and the PA and the IPG and a number of other organisations, the London Book Fair, were really helpful in kind of taking the digital copy of everything that we'd done and sending that out. So actually, ridiculously, at the end of it, we probably, the articles that we produced probably saw 2 or 3 times as many readers as they usually would. It just took us a We just had to figure out how to get there. So, I mean, cooperation in the industry is generally strong, but we've seen it definitely stronger this year. Obviously, the nibbies, we've had to postpone the nibbies. That was a big
It's really
one.
sad.
Very sad. Very sad indeed. That's always a big moment in the industry, to celebrate everything that's good about publishing. And it's sad that we'll have to wait to do that. Although, we've got all of the entries and the judging has already taken place. So the winners are there. I'm not sure exactly how that.
Who are they?
Yeah, no.
Nice try.
You know what? The only reason that I was glad.
It was worth a try.
Yeah. I was glad that London Book Fair and Bologna didn't go ahead this year. The only reason, frankly, anything else made me sad and want to weep, because I love them, was that I didn't have to face publishers knowing things and not being able to tell them, because I always find that an absolutely awful part of the year. And then this morning, it won't be this morning by the time this is launched, but we've just started to look at launching some of our conferences online to try and help people to disseminate some of the best practice, particularly in the marketing and publicity arena. So yeah, we're just experimenting and trying. As a small company, we're just trying to pivot, that's the word everyone's using, and get as much information out to as many people as we can, and make sure that's useful information.
Yeah, that's amazing. And potentially you've probably all witnessed this, but do you think on a book sale basis, obviously at the beginning I saw a lot of people ordering from independent bookshops and doing stuff right at the beginning of the crisis, but right now, do we see sales are going up, sales are going down? Juliet, potentially you could start from Oneworld's perspective. What are you seeing?
Well, at the beginning, we certainly, as you say, pivoted our publicity and marketing to form a 5-person team where they spent a lot of their energy coming up with imaginative ways of producing virtual book launches and creating digital assets that independent bookshops could use, as well as Waterstones. And we used the Hive program via Faber Alliance, who are now distributing us to the field through the independent market. And that all looked quite promising, and we really spent a lot of time on social media trying to direct sales to the indie market. But then we had two problems that happened straight away. One is that Bertram's was put on stop and eventually closed their warehouse. And then we thought, well, we've still got Gardner's, the other big wholesaler in the UK. And then Gardner's said they're no longer doing small orders, and they closed temporarily. They've now started doing a few orders, but it's literally one book at a time. So the indie booksellers are going to be severely hit by that. They put so much effort into, I mean, I suppose they can sell the stock they've already got in store, but they can't function in to the as full as they could before, and it's going to be quite a challenge for them. Waterstones is obviously doing a lot of work to make up online what they've lost through closing 270 odd stores. There's no way Waterstones.com can compete with Amazon.com. The supermarkets are picking up a little bit of the slack. They've realized that they're literally the only brick and mortar store around, so that's helped. But it's been a big challenge, and obviously publishers have had to respond to everything that changes. You set up one system and then that closes, you have to set up a new one. So it's been quite a challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine. For Laurie, do you think that's for you? Have you seen that as well for you? And how you have any predictions of how that maybe that'll stay the same or change?
Well, we represent, both publishers and authors. So we do have a large chunk of our business, our rights, which are busy. And for example, film now is on hiatus, but people are still buying. And rights, people have time now to read. So we're finding that our rights business, while certainly not, full force, is still quite active. We do have a couple of publishers, one of whom is extremely well known in the UK, a large portion of his business, which is done at shows and fairs, and that's been severely affected. And he had 24 frontlist titles for this season, and he's quite upset, rightly so, because everything has been canceled. So again, we're trying as much as possible to do direct to consumer. We're trying to increase people's social media, but it's not easy. It's challenging. And in the United States, the independent market is wonderful, but with the exception of maybe Powell's, who's now gone and rehired, because their online business is so active, Jackson McNally Jackson, I mean, they're all basically, shut down. But I still think this is a time where we can reassess how we sell direct to consumer. I think it's important.
Yeah, definitely. And Emma, on the direct to consumer thing, I think that there's obviously been a lot of like changes in the industry where there's more like kind of consumer facing brands coming up. Like you think of like Granta and Faber and Penguin Platform, places that are like really finding a specific type of reader and trying to talk to them directly. Do you see that kind of becoming a thing more permanently in the industry, or do you think that we'll go back when this is all over?
It's so hard. I can't see that it won't. I simply can't see that the conversations that people are starting now end once some form of normality resumes again. Yeah, I just can't see that life will never quite be the same again. So
yeah, definitely.
I think those conversations have to keep going. Absolutely, I do. Yeah.
Again,
excuse me.
Sorry. No, go. Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. In the area, for example, of sci-fi, I mean, you look at Tor.com, you look at Angry Robot, which is a wonderful company. They, for many years, have used their website and their newsletter and really have created a community where people can interact. And I think I see it with publishers, for example, in the United States. There are one or two, for example, mindful publishers who are now partnering with nonprofits. And we, for example, have a publisher that does Zen books for children. And it's a very good time, obviously, for that. But the partnership with the nonprofit, the partnership with different types of organizations, it's not what we're used to doing. But I think it may evolve, and after hopefully all of this is over, we may have to keep some of what we've set up now in place, because I don't think we're ever going to go back totally to where we were.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's genre fiction and lots of things like that have been building communities for years. It's actually part of their model. So maybe we look to those genre fictions that have often sometimes been sidelined by the literary world to actually really learn to connect with readers like that. And from a workplace perspective, I'm interested in the effects that it will have, because obviously people's childcare is becoming harder, to say the least, at least in Britain. Like, it's a predominantly female industry, if not female led all the time, but female populated. How do you think kind of flexible hours are affecting everybody? How have you seen that in operation, in a negative and positive way, I suppose?
I think it's made everybody realise that home working is not always the joy that it might seem. One of my colleagues said, I've been working way harder at home than I usually do in the office. So I think sometimes the intensity is under, if you hear the office saying I'm working from home, I think sometimes those who don't have the choice to do that may now
think of it as lacking.
Actually, I'm not sure that it's such a boon anyway, although I think it is. And I think also it does make you it makes the people who don't do the juggle, I wouldn't really name men in this category, but men, realise that when you're working from home and put a job together, the juggle is real. It's jolly hard work, and I'm going to bed every night absolutely shattered because I have 2 children who aren't allowed to go out and see their friends. I don't want them on screens all day, every day, although they are on screens right now. And I have to be their world for them right now. And that's a real challenge. So
yeah, working 2 jobs, really.
Sorry?
Working 2 jobs.
Yeah, it is. It's a privilege. I mean, when else am I next going to get however many weeks or months with my kids to really shape them? And, I remember Philip Jones, who you both will have heard of, said to me just as we were leaving the office, remember, your kids are going to remember this time for the rest of their lives, so make it count. And
that's very sweet.
That's
Nice.
nice.
Right.
It's very
And
nice.
I don't always say he's right, but at that particular moment, he was. And I think, it's not always the big exciting things that we're doing. Sometimes it's just a game of football in the garden. But I think those things, they make you better at whatever your job you're doing. And if publishing is all about bringing life experience to the table in books, then what we're doing right now hopefully will make us better at whatever job it is that we're doing in publishing.
Absolutely.
But
Definitely. Yeah, I also think maybe like I hope that a lot of people that I know that work at Penguin have been heading back to their regional homes. So people that have moved into London are actually moving back, to be with family or just to be there, like back into regional. So I hope personally as well that it will make the industry think a bit more about being less London centric, because people start thinking about what matters. Because I think building the best workforce means hiring from everywhere, and if those people aren't like up for moving to London, should still hire them.
Our social media is being done from South Gloucestershire.
Yeah,
but it does work, and you can make it work. So why shouldn't we?
Yeah, definitely. How because I think as well for consumers, and think of consumer perspective, they often don't really think about us as publishers, but they are really thinking about the authors. Like they're the people that are very real in their minds. They're the people that they can often like understand the impact on them. How do you think that this is going to impact authors long term? I mean, there's obviously a lot of talk of people like writing their greatest novel from home, which is, we can hope. But how do you think it's going to affect being an author now and in the future? Maybe Juliet, you could speak to that first.
I don't know. We're very preoccupied at the moment with trying to protect the sales and in terms of authors' income, and obviously down the line the agents' income for books that have come out in March and April. A lot of our titles in May and June we've already moved, but I think that the real challenge, like we had a debut author, Frances Macken, whose book You Have to Make Your Own Fun Around Here was published on the 19th of March, just after everything closed. And it's really, really tough because she's missed out on all the launch parties we'd organised. She'd missed out on bookshop events in UK. She's an Irish author. So we'd organised a lot of stuff in Ireland and here. We'd just had a bookseller dinner with a few reviewers come, which was great, which we did at the very, very beginning of March. But everything else she's lost. So for her, she's almost lost that debut opportunity. And I think it's really important for publishers to try and, where they can, find either better opportunities to publish the books if they are in time to move them. In her case, we weren't, but it literally had just come out. So we've done a lot of work with we've done videos of authors reading and talking about their books, which we've put on social media, and we've given these to the bookshops to use in their social media as well. So our main effort is to try and protect the ones that are already in the pipeline, frankly. And we're trying to set up a debut festival in the autumn for all the debuts that missed their debut, and trying to pair them with experienced authors who can champion their books and also do. I'm hoping it'll be a physical event, not an online event, and see if we can get some Arts Council funding for it, because I just feel so incredibly sorry for authors who've been caught through no fault of their own in almost like a kind of a whirlpool of nothing. That there's a lot of things happening, but none of them are really driving sales in any way that resembles what they would have experienced the first time around. And they're also missing, as I say, their live events, the chance to meet other authors and other through all the festivals being cancelled. So I do appreciate the idea that there are going to be some good things coming from this, but from the inside of the whirlpool, thinking of our authors, I think this is just terrible. You can't put a good spin on it, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I think that's good to acknowledge that it's not going to be just the same but different. It's like no. Yeah, Laurie, you guys deal also with kind of social media marketing and stuff like that. How do you think that there can be a difference made by digital marketing and kind of?
Oh, I think absolutely. I mean, we do. For example, we created and launched a new sci-fi and fantasy imprint year before last on the the Barbarian and Robert E. Howard IP with Marvel, which has the tie-in with the Marvel comics. And I think, if possible, it goes back to branding, and it goes back to the IP, and the trans and cross media at this point in time, I think, is essential. And I understand, people will say, well, for literary fiction, which we do also represent several authors of, it's not the same as a sci-fi or a romance or a fantasy novel. But we still go back to that old adage of the author still needs to, forgive me for saying this, come in with somewhat of a platform and will be active, on their own social media. We have a historical fiction author who spends as much time writing on her social media as she does in her writing, and is successful, but is exhausting. And it's going to be part of the drill now. I think that social media is essential to what's going on. Absolutely essential.
Definitely. I think people having that presence and having that kind of social media literacy, I guess, it's that skill that often we've kind of have thought as not quite as important as it apparently now is. So that's really interesting.
Can I say I only joined Twitter about 3 weeks ago?
Oh, welcome.
Yeah.
How are you finding it so far?
Yeah, it's mad. I mean, I've been to hundreds of meetings where I've sat in, and people are talking about their social media strategy or whatever they're doing, and I kind of go, yeah, rah, 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 rah. And now I'm actually looking at it. It is insane. I know that makes me sound like a complete idiot, something out of the 20th century, but I had just never taken the time to really get my head around it before, and it's extraordinary.
Yeah, I think I particularly use Twitter as an address book. So it's basically everybody I've ever met in publishing, and I can reach them faster than I can on email. Yeah. And if I needed, so I'm covering a lot of the books that have come out during coronavirus. So making a big video that's going to be on my channel. It's going to talk about basically all the books that I think are good that are coming out in this period. And I didn't send one email to do that. I just put out a tweet and was like, publicists, please send me your books. And
is really quite, I mean, I'm sure people who've been on it a while know this already, but yeah, for a newbie, the power of it is really quite something.
Yeah, I think when you think about it more as like a kind of like intuitive email, it makes more sense to people a little bit, I think. First, I'm going to ask about readers, then I'm going to ask about people who want to get into publishing. From a reader's perspective, what should we be encouraging them to do if they want to support the industry and they're aware of authors, they're aware of publishers? I think people are going to be moving more towards slow consumerism, which I think is generally a good thing, where they're sitting back and they can really choose where they buy something from, what format they buy it in. They're willing to wait for it to be delivered. If you were thinking as a reader who wanted the industry to be strong at the end of this, how would you want them to buy? Would it be physically, audio? Where should they look to discover books that aren't being talked about elsewhere? Who wants to go for that one?
Anything and everything.
Everything.
I think readers should read in any format they like, whether it's audio, ebook, or physical. And I think I think we need all the avenues to market, to be honest, whether it's a supermarket, which now is probably your best place to buy a book, or a chain or an indie, or even online. But I think I think at the moment the Publishers Association has been lobbying very successfully to have VAT removed from ebooks, and the new challenge is to get VAT removed from audiobooks on the grounds that a book is a book is a book. And I think readers should just read. If they want to support publishers and booksellers and authors and agents, they just need to read. Well, they need to buy the books, but read.
Yeah, that's true about the VAT as well. That's a good point, because it's not. Some people might not know that there's still VAT charged on audio and ebook, where it's not on physical.
It's just been taken off ebook at the last budget.
Oh yes, sorry, you're right. Yeah.
But it's still on audio.
Yeah, and audio is a huge market at the moment. So
yes, it is. Audio is ebook is flattened off, but audio is definitely increasing.
Yeah. Laurie, sorry, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was. I think that, at the end of the day, it's about great storytelling and about stories that we want to share. And I think all mediums, are important, but we go even beyond that. And I think, comic books are important, games are important, because you can look at the Halo series, for example. You can bring in a reader or a future reader from a game or a comic book or from an ebook. So I think it's important that all genres, all mediums are available. But at the same time, I think publishers do need to have more of a interaction with their readers, and that we don't use bookstores. I am a firm and staunch supporter of bookstores, both large and small, but I do think we need to connect perhaps a little bit more with our readers directly.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. So thinking about the publishers that you're following and supporting them is important as well.
I think that tends to work more where there's a specific community of interest. So where you see
true.
active mailing lists and subscription models, they tend to be in publishers that have a very specific, concise area of publishing. So translated fiction or romance fiction or sci-fi, they tend to build up strong mailing lists so they can communicate with the readers. But when you're a broadly based publisher like we are, and certainly like the big publishers are, it's very difficult to build up a mailing list of that will appeal to readers. And readers famously barely know two publishers' names. They know Penguin, and I mean, even with Harry Potter, I bet most of them don't know it's published by Bloomsbury. So that's a challenge.
I think it's interesting because we, for example, have been renting for two of our literary publishers the Poets and Writers list. And we are working with an American nonprofit who's acting, to accept donations during this time. And I think, I go back to the branding. You think of literary houses, at least in America, like City Lights, or like Grey Wolf, or even like Melville House, which is a smaller house. And it's hard because, the numbers for literary fiction, at least in America, are about 3,000 to 5,000. It's not a big universe. But, I look at Grey Wolf because, I've known for a long time. It's a strong coterie of supporters. And granted, they are nonprofits, so that does make a difference. We look at Rain Tap, organized, but not being a nonprofit, it's a real struggle. And it's how do you brand literary fiction, because you define yourself by your books, less in the house. So that really is the challenge that we need to address, come the future, because I think we're going to need to deal with it in the next, year or so. It's here now. That's the problem. But I agree with you that it's so much easier to do romance or to do certain sci-fi because they're used to buying directly from their publisher. They're used to interacting and blogging with each other, as opposed to someone who reads, literary fiction, for example, or historical fiction.
Do you think that's maybe then a flag for bigger publishers to invest more in division identity, so imprints and having more of a kind of presence themselves rather than, I don't know, it's interesting because I think that's where the specifics come.
I think readers tend to be attracted to the small presses in that respect, and Other Stories has a subscription model, so does Irene Press, and I think that's the nearest you get to the equivalent of a not-for-profit like Grey Wolf or some of these other literary fiction like Coffee House in America. I think when you got something like Pyrene and Other Stories, they get a sort of a sympathy vote from readers, and that Fitzcarraldo is the same, a sense that we're supporting something valuable that's struggling a minnow among sharks. And I think it's very difficult for big publishers to present themselves in that kind of way.
Yeah, no, I think, and it's also when you're big in publishing, it doesn't mean you're really that big compared to other industries. It's not like you have the same sway as H&M in the fashion industry.
No,
that's very true. It's still small fish, a big fish to a small pond. I guess last question, I'm thinking about the people who are members of SYP who are either like in their first couple of years in the industry or they're looking to join the industry. what's the industry going to look like for them after this? And do you think, what are the kind of key skills that you'd be looking for people? What do you think is going to be really key for people moving up in the industry?
I don't know. I mean, in terms of publishing specifically, I think anybody who's enthusiastic, hardworking, reasonably literate has a good place. I think, and it requires lots of different types of life experiences to make publishing fully rounded. It's not just about diversity and accessibility. It goes beyond that. It goes to having a diverse range of hearts and minds, I think, to fully flesh out what publishers need to be producing for the audience they're serving. And I think anybody who's really enthusiastic can find a place, I think. And I hope that doesn't sound too sort of overly general and optimistic, but certainly when we look at our staff, we have people from all walks of life and various racial backgrounds and religious backgrounds and language bases. And I think it's perhaps, whether you're small or large, I think that's reasonably typical of publishing. I know there's a complaint that publishing is a little bit too university based and too white, too middle class, but I think that is changing. I think the point you made earlier about trying to establish publishing bases outside London is a good point. I would say we were based in Oxford for 25 years, and we found it a real struggle to get staff who had experience in trade publishing, because in Oxford most of the publishing companies are academic or educational or journals. And I think that is a challenge for smaller publishers to find staff if they want staff with experience. But on the other hand, for big publishers to set up satellite offices, and Canongate has done this very well because they started from Scotland and then moved down to London. But I know some of the big publishers are now trying to set up satellite offices. And I think that's an excellent way of bringing a wider range of people into the industry. And, they may end up moving down to London ultimately, but I think having them in, the north, in Scotland, in Northern Ireland and what have you is a great asset for publishing. It can't be anything but a good thing.
Absolutely. I think we've lost Emma. She's gone.
Have. Emma,
I don't know what she meant. I know. But Laurie, I'll ask. Laurie, I'll ask you. What do you see? After this? I don't know if anyone can predict what's going to happen after this. But what do you think the landscape's going to look like for people joining publishing or moving up in publishing, and what do they need to know?
I think it's almost going to evolve the way university hirings did in the United States, for example. And I think people wanting to come into publishing need to be perhaps a little open to maybe being freelance rather than staff, and also maybe doing 2 or 3 different possibilities rather than just one. I think given what's happened over the last month or so, I think there are going to be a lot of people looking for positions. And I think while young people will always come into publishing, I think they have to be open to working remotely, which presents a whole other, set of problems, because you go into publishing to be around like-minded people and to want to be able to walk down the hall and talk to somebody or bounce an idea off. And if you can't, how do you do that other than a Skype call or a phone call? It's not the same. But I think that there are a lot of different opportunities. And I also would say to young people who want to come into publishing, think about different areas. Maybe think, about comic books, or think about graphic novels. And, when I went into publishing, I was doing, my doctoral dissertation. I never thought I would work with comic books. I mean, it wasn't even a remote possibility. But there are lots of different areas that someone can work with, and maybe not only from the editorial side. For example, the director of Consortium was an editor at HarperCollins and ended up coming and working in marketing rather than as she started in editorial. So I think it's just a whole different way of approaching both an entrance and launching a career. But I think if someone is smart, is passionate, is willing to work 90 hours a week and, give it your all, I think someone will always find a place. I had a colleague who told me that excellence will always rise to the top. And I believe that a really talented person will always find it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's really interesting what you say about having that face-to-face interaction. Hi, Emma, you're back. We missed
sorry,
you.
I had to plug my phone in then.
No, that's cool. I think it's really interesting, this idea of like the value of face-to-face contact as well. And I wonder how that plays into the importance of London Book Fair and Bologna and all of these like big Frankfurt, these big trade fairs. Actually, at some point I was like, oh no, is this really going to threaten them? Because obviously people realize that they can like do a lot more video kind of deals and video meetings, and maybe people will devalue what it's like to like have that face-to-face interaction. But at the same time, from what you said, Laurie, is that also, yeah, I guess maybe if people are working in a normal way more remotely, maybe like book fairs are going to have a bigger impact and be more important. I don't know, Emma, do you have any thoughts on that?
Somebody asked me that question just after London Book Fair was cancelled this year, and I think my two worlds collided for a moment, my previous job and this job, and I just thought, have you ever met publishers? I mean, they would literally have a party in a bus stop.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
Gregarious, generally, caring. They want to know about you. They don't just want to know about your books. They want to know about how your kids are. They want to know about your holidays. They want to know where you ate last night. They want to know, they care about you as a person. So I think the idea that face-to-face contact is going to plummet is, at least in the publishing industry, probably not likely, because publishers
we all like a drink too much.
Yeah, well, we all like to be together too much. I mean, there is nothing like the raw. Well, I don't know if you've ever been to a publishing party and you're kind of taking your coat off and hanging your bag up, and you can just hear down the corridor this roar of people. And there is no other sound like it in the entire world. And I don't think publishers are going to let that go anytime soon. We've all known each other a long time. I mean, you guys, your years in publishing make mine look like a dwarf. We all know each other. We all, we've all grown up together. We've all worked together. We've seen each other succeed and fail. And I frankly don't think that that's going anywhere. And I think people still want to see each other face to face.
I think in publishing companies, I think the ability to put all your staff out for remote working, and now obviously they've all set up with laptops, and to carry on a certain amount of work through Zoom meetings has been quite transformative in certain respects. We've always had some of our staff working at least one day from home because they commute, whether editorial, design, sales, and marketing. But I think we've been talking about going down to 4-day week, but I think certainly after all this is over, we might go to a 4-day week in the office and 1 day a week at home. I think it gives people a more relaxed environment, and yet they're still relatively productive. I mean, editors often work from home if they've got a big project to edit, because they, so we've been doing that for years, and they often work 2-3 days at home to do it. But I'm definitely thinking about transforming, or at least having a very good look at what we can do in going forward in terms of retaining something of this, because I think now they're set up for it, we might as well.
Well, I think it also makes you think about where your energy is. For example, we figured out in our house that we generally work hardest for about the first 2 or 3 hours in the morning, and probably the last 3 hours in the afternoon. The middle of the day is a washout. So I might as well go and play football with the kids or do something else then. And then, I generally have a couple of hours in the evening at the moment where, nothing particularly else I need to do, and I'm happy to work. So I do think it does make you think about your life as a whole, and when it's best to be doing the washing, tidying, kids, whatever else, exercise, whatever else you need to be. And when actually you're focused, you're ready to work, and often you do your best work. So I think companies can really benefit if they really give their employee flexibility about when they do their best work, because you only stand to benefit from that.
No,
absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So you're taking that back to PRH, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We'll feedback.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, unless anyone's got any other thoughts, I think that's a lovely note to end on. That we're not going to be kept from each other. The books continue, and you've all been absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and your thoughts. So thank you to Juliet, Emma, and Laurie.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the talk and can't wait to hear your thoughts on the subject. Join the conversation on Twitter by using the hashtag SYPUKpodcast.
And as promised, I'm back to talk to you about what's next for the SYP. We are looking to record more podcasts and webinars on topics relevant to the current developments in the publishing industry. Future episodes will be free for our members and will be available to non-members in exchange for a modest fee.
If you're interested in becoming a member, please visit our website at www.thesyp.org.uk for information on how to do that. Membership comes with free or discounted tickets to other events like our conferences, as well as other benefits like discounts on training courses and more. You can also find us on Twitter at SYP_UK.
If you are an SYP member, you might also get a chance to take part in one of our future webisodes to ask our panel members any questions you like. We hope to have you listening again soon. Until next time!